we're going to perform a radio version of The Courtroom, a reenactment of one woman's deportation proceedings. Facilitated and put on and hosted by the Great Plains Radio Theater Group, along with some of our very talented wit actors and community actors. With that, I'll turn it over to Ralph Swain. Thanks, everyone.
As Holly said, I'm with the Great Plains Radio Theater Project, and we have some of our actors from the group that are going to be participating, but we also have people who have never performed on mic before. So, big hand clap for them. Yeah, it takes some courage to do that. So I will be narrator, so I'll be sitting at this mic. The actors will come here at certain key points. So they will sit at these chairs and then come up and deliver. And toward the end of this, it goes into naturalization ceremony. When it comes to the point where everybody is going to raise their right hand and take the actual oath of citizenship, I'm going to ask all of you to stand. Those of you that can, if you have trouble standing, do it from your seat. But if you stand and raise your right hand, we're going to actually go through a naturalization ceremony, and then I'll make some comments, personal comments, to all of you new citizens. Okay, so you're actually part of the play.
Okay, let's go on the record. This is a hearing taking place on November 17, 2008 in Chicago. Immigration Judge Craig Zerbe presiding. The respondent in this case is Elizabeth Keithley, case number A097688-233. All right, ma'am, if you'd step forward, just come up here to testify. I want you to come up here. Thank you. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that testimony you give in these proceedings and the statements in your applications will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you. You can lower your hand. You can lower your hand, ma'am. Ma'am, could you tell me your name, please?
My name is Elizabeth Keithley.
Keithley, all right. And Richard Hannes is representing you today. Gregory Guckenberger is representing the Department of Homeland Security. Now we are here to consider a number of elements. First, the charges. The charges are in dispute as far as I can recall from the last hearing. Have you changed your position on the charges at all, Mr. Hannes?
No, Judge.
And I also think you want to apply for, and you contend the respondent is eligible for, adjustment of status. You still want to go ahead with that?
Yes, correct.
I know that the respondent said that she spoke English at the last hearing, but you said you wanted an interpreter, I think, didn't you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Hannes, you wanted to speak, in fact, even before you started, you wanted to speak to that, so go ahead.
I made a request and I spoke with one of the staff about having an interpreter. Now, she understands English. I just wanted to have a standby, someone who speaks the Visayan language, because the English...
What is Visayan?
Visayan is the dialect of Tagalog, and...
Okay, Tagalog?
Right.
Okay, Mrs. Keithley, so you want a Tagalog interpreter?
I think I just...
You don't need one?
Yep.
You don't need an interpreter. Okay. I was only concerned that there was something she by chance didn't understand, because she speaks good English, but in situations like this where I was being overly maybe protective. And if my client feels that she doesn't need an interpreter, then I will defer to my client.
Do you feel you don't need an interpreter, ma'am?
No, just because I prefer to speak, because I don't know Tagalog, because I don't really know how to speak Tagalog or something.
So the judge is asking if we have a Visayan interpreter, which is what I recommended.
Yes.
Would you be comfortable?
Yep. Yes, Your Honor.
Well, I could check whether we have a Visayan interpreter. I think it's likely they'll have a Tagalog. How about, do you want a Tagalog interpreter? First of all, do you need any interpreter?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't.
I mean, you're in the best position to make the choice. If you say you don't speak English well, I'll check and see if we can get a Tagalog interpreter. The Visayan, I think that's a dialect of Tagalog, so that there might be somebody who speaks that dialect, but I'd say that the chances are very good that we can't get a Tagalog interpreter for you.
Would that be somebody appearing on speakerphone or?
Yes, so would you like to see if there is a Visayan interpreter available, or did you want to just go without one?
Just go without one.
All right, we can proceed forward. I think we're ready to start with the respondent's testimony. I've read through your brief very quick, Mr. Hannes, so I know what you're contending. I'll leave it at that. Mr. Guckenberger, I don't have a brief from you, so let me ask you, are you contending that there is no defense so far? I mean, what counsel is saying is that these procedures are inadequate by the Illinois Voting Commission, and secondly, she didn't do this knowingly. She didn't intentionally, knowingly, and willfully vote.
And one of the things, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Certainly.
The thing is, even if an intention or not was involved, there's a common law doctrine as a defense. And if this case was ever brought forward to charge her, called entrapment by estoppel, that's when an individual takes action according to the government official's guidance. The basic action that she took was actually at the guidance and suggestion of the government official. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Judge. I just wanted to elucidate or highlight some of the points that are in my brief.
Mr. Hannes is contesting apparently his client did not complete the voter registration application in the block that is marked off, "I am a citizen of the United States."
Okay, well, I hear what you're saying, and I'm sure that you're going to later on have an opportunity to talk about it. You don't have to feel like this is your only chance to rebut one another. I think Mr. Guckenberger should go first, Mr. Hannes, just because he has to prove by clear and convincing evidence the charges established. And you can go next. Is there any dispute on that?
No.
Okay, all right. Mr. Guckenberger, you may proceed then.
Ma'am, could you please state for the record your full name, and could you spell it for the record?
My name is Elizabeth Keatley. Elizabeth Keatley.
And ma'am, what is your current address?
1606 Pasture Lane, Bloomington, Illinois.
And where were you born?
The Philippines.
On what date?
October 28, 1978.
Okay, and what is your citizenship?
Philippine.
Do you have citizenship in any other country?
No.
Do you believe that you are a citizen of the United States?
No.
What is the citizenship of your father?
Filipino.
And your mother?
Filipina.
Are they in the United States?
No.
Now, how old were you when you came into the United States?
26.
And do you recall your immigration status upon your entry into the United States?
Yes. Visa. K3.
Okay, and are you now married?
Yes.
And who did you marry?
I married John.
Do you know his last name?
John Keatley.
When did you marry?
July 11th, 2003.
And do you have children?
Yes.
How many children do you have?
One, and with my husband, I have one stepdaughter.
And how old is your child?
22 months.
Have you ever believed that you are a citizen of the United States?
No.
Now, do you recall registering to vote at the Department of Motor Vehicles in 2004?
Yes, in Bloomington.
Now, why did you go to, back in 2004, why did you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles?
Because I wanted to get my driver's permit and my state ID.
Okay, I'm going to show you, I have a document, ma'am, that is part of Exhibit 6, and it's the registration form, okay?
He sets the form on the witness stand in front of Elizabeth.
Is this your signature in the right-hand box?
Yes.
It says Elizabeth Keatley and the date.
11/27/2004.
Okay, can you read to the court Block 10 where it says voter affidavit?
No, not really. No, I didn't read it when I was there. They didn't tell me to.
Did you read it in 2004? Did you read English back then in 2004?
Yes, I can, but I have a hard time. I can't really understand. I had a hard time to understand.
Okay.
Yes, but I am embarrassed because it's almost 5 years.
I understand. If you would read what it says right now to the court?
Yes.
If you can read it for the court?
Read this?
Yes, below the affidavit.
11, below the affidavit, read all this statement in the box to the right. If you check no to either of these questions, do not complete this form. I swear or affirm that I am a citizen of the United States and I will be...
There should be an interpreter.
The first part of what you read, ma'am, I am a citizen of the United States, and there's a block yes there. And now, can you tell the court which block is checked off?
I left that one,
Could you read the last statement, please?
The information I have provided is true to the best of my knowledge, under penalty of perjury. If I have provided false information, I may be fined, imprisoned, or if I am not a U.S. citizen, deported from or refused entry into the United States.
Okay, and then you signed that document.
Yes, I did sign it, but I don't remember reading the statement because they didn't tell me to read it and to review or something.
Are these all your check marks here on the yes boxes to the questions?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember. He just rushed me through.
So you don't remember if you checked it off?
No, I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay. Now, do you know whether or not there are procedures that the Department of Motor Vehicles must follow when people register to vote in this process?
Objection?
I didn't know.
I'm just asking for opinion whether or not she knows there are procedures they must follow.
Okay, actually, I heard there was an objection. I heard the respondent's answer. I think the question is moot because of the answer.
Do you have any reason to believe that the Department of Motor Vehicles, the clerk who assisted you, did not follow this procedure?
Yes, I have to believe because they present my passport and visa, and they didn't ask me any questions. That's all I have.
I'm sorry. Do you need to take a little bit of a break?
I don't really think that is necessary.
Well, we do have some tissue. Do you want some tissues?
We can give the respondent a moment just to recuperate her composure, and I think you can take a moment or two. You let us know when you're ready, ma'am. We'll continue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, if you think you need more time, let us know. We'll take a recess.
I think I'm ready. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, so you feel okay. Are you ready to go?
Miss Keithley, did you ever vote in a U.S. election?
Yes.
Okay, and what election was that?
Congressional?
United States Congress?
I think so, yes. I'm not sure. I think so, yes.
Okay, now do you recall having to fill out an application to vote, to get your ballot when you voted?
I don't know how to answer.
Just answer the best you can.
If you don't understand, you can just say you don't understand.
I don't understand.
Your Honor, I would like to have the witness to show her page 2 of Exhibit 6.
Yes, go ahead.
This is what I was alluding to, ma'am. This is an application to vote. Is that your signature?
Yes.
And at the time you signed this, did you believe that you were a citizen of the United States?
No.
Okay, it was 2 years from the time you registered until the time you voted. Did you ever find out from anyone that a non-citizen cannot vote in the United States?
No, nobody told me at all.
Okay, now your husband, did you talk to your husband about it?
Yes, I talked to my husband when we received voters registration, and we just thought that, yes, I can vote because they gesture me, and I show my foreign passport and my visa with the passport, and we just thought that I can vote and I'm eligible to vote. So we just don't think about it, that we couldn't vote because you aren't a citizen yet. And
well, did you show the motor vehicle people when you registered your passport?
I show my passport because I don't have anything that I can show. I don't have a state ID. That's why I applied for my state ID, and I don't have a social security number yet because I just got here like 6 months before.
You didn't have a state ID yet?
Yes, I didn't have any.
And you showed them, you mentioned earlier, you showed them a U.S. visa.
Yes, my passport and my visa because it's all together.
Let me ask you just a clarifying question. Who did you show your passport and visa to? The official was the official that you encountered in the state office?
Yes, Your Honor.
At the Department of Motor Vehicles?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, and so then you showed him your passport, and so you opened your passport?
No, he opened it.
Just describe to me what happened.
Okay, what happened is because we are in front of a lot of people in the line at the DMV. At that time, I gave my passport because he asked me that if you have an ID or something. I said, no, yes, only a passport and visa. So I gave it to him, and he looked it up, and after that, he asked me, do you wish to vote? And I just say yes, because I don't know what is the difference, I have no option, yes or no. So he didn't ask me yes or no or something. And do you want to give your organ donor? And I say yes. And he just rushed me through, and after that, he told me, he showed me to the exit sign, because I just don't know what I'm going to do next. So he just he's assigning me, instructing me where I'm going to go next.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, you just signed the application to register?
Yes, I just signed the application to register without reading it.
Were you the one who checked off the boxes that you were a citizen of the United States?
Objection.
That you were a citizen of the United States?
Objection, asked and answered.
I think I'm going to let him ask. I agree with you. It was asked before, but I assume that this is on a chain of questions. If it isn't, if it's just repetition, I'll revisit it, but overruled.
Thank you, Judge. It is a chain of questions, Judge. Thank you. The question was, were you the one who checked off the box that said you're a citizen of the United States?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
When you were at the DMV, did they have any instructions, written instructions?
No.
Did they give you any written instructions outside of the application to register itself?
No, just look, and we don't get instructions or anything, and they talk to you personally, and they type in with a computerized or something.
Is there any particular reason why you didn't read the instructions on the registration form when you, which you read to the court earlier?
He just rushed me through, and I just didn't think anything about it because I just knew. And I think it's kind of different from the Philippines procedures or something. And because they're in the Philippines, we always fill out the paper yourself. You don't have like they ask you or something like that. No, I just thought everything's okay.
Did you realize, according to the warnings that you read to the court, that if you're not a citizen and you provide false information by claiming you're a citizen, that you could be deported?
I don't realize at that time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keeley.
And Mr. Hannes, you may proceed now.
Ms. Keithley, what was the reason you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles?
To get my driver's permit and a state ID.
Before getting there, did you have any intention or did you ever think about voting in the United States?
No.
Do you know the requirements to vote in the United States?
No.
Did you ever tell anybody before that day that you were a U.S. citizen?
No.
Did you ever think of yourself as a U.S. citizen?
No.
When you appeared before the representative, you mentioned something about the first question being your identification, correct?
Yes.
And that identification was what?
Passport and visa.
The passport was from what country?
Philippines.
I just want to show you the passport and attached to the submission to this court and presented on October the 20th. There was an attachment included in the passport, attachment A, attached to the visa. Can you see that? Is in the passport that you showed them?
Yes.
And what is that? Where did you get that visa?
Philippines.
At the U.S. Embassy?
Yes.
Did you ever think there was any difference between your eligibility to vote versus your eligibility to get a driver's license or to donate an organ?
Yes.
Did you believe you were any less eligible to vote? Let me rephrase. Did you at all wonder if you were eligible to vote before this time?
No.
Did you trust this government examiner?
Yes, I did.
Why did you trust him?
Because I showed my current passport and my visa, so that's why I trusted him. And
After you showed it, you mentioned something about signing a document. Do you even remember the document that you signed?
no, I don't even remember.
You couldn't tell us if you remember if it was that document you signed or not, correct?
Yes.
Wait a second. You have to speak out loud, okay? Otherwise, it doesn't pick up what you meant to say.
And you don't have any specific recollection that you checked any box, is that correct?
Correct.
Let me ask you something, Beth. If you knew you were not eligible to vote, would you have voted?
No.
If you knew that signing that document led to something that you weren't eligible for, would you have signed it?
No, I'm not going to sign it.
And what did you think you were signing when you signed on that dotted line?
I just think that I'm signing just for my state ID, and I am applying for,
So you didn't even know that it was a voter registration application that you were signing?
no.
Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Did you learn English in the Philippines?
Yes, we do. We do learn English in the Philippines, but the difference is we're kind of slow there in the Philippines because we have different language, and English is our second language. But here in the U.S., you know the first language, and they kind of talk fast.
Did the man at the DMV, would you say he was talking fast?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, he is.
And did you get a voter's registration card eventually in the mail?
Yes, in the mail.
Did you have the idea based on what happened at the Department of Motor Vehicles that it was okay to vote?
Yes, I have the idea. I showed him my passport and my visa.
Did you hide anything when you applied?
No,
Did you ever lie when you applied?
no,
Did you ever tell them you were a U.S. citizen?
no.
Who lives with you in your house right now?
My husband and my baby and my stepdaughter,
What's your baby's name?
Shayna.
And she's your child with John?
Yes,
How old is Shayna?
22 months, going to be 23.
And what is your stepchild's name?
Veronica.
How long has she lived with you?
Since I got here in 2004,
How come she doesn't live with her mother?
the custody is with her father.
And would you say that you've lived together happily as a family?
Yes, we do.
Did you marry John because you love him?
Yes,
Does he love you?
yes.
Have you ever been arrested in or outside the United States?
No, no,
Are you on public assistance or welfare?
no,
Have you ever told a lie to any government official at any time?
no,
Would you ever tell a lie to a government official?
no,
Have you ever broken the law?
no,
Would you ever endanger your status in this country to do something that you were not allowed to do?
no.
I have no further questions, Judge.
Any redirect, Mr. Guckenberger?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then, the witness is excused. You can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Judge.
Sir, if you're going to be testifying, you can step right in here and just,
Right here?
right over here, right in front, just step right up here, raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, have a seat. The microphone will pick up your voice. You don't need to shout, but please speak toward the questioner. I'm going to have you proceed first, Mr. Hannes.
Thank you. Can you please state your full name?
John G. Keithley,
And where do you reside?
1606
And who did-
Pasture Lane, Bloomington.
And who do you reside with?
My wife, Elizabeth, and our 2 children. I have Veronica, who is to be 13 in January. I got custody of her from a previous marriage. And Shayna, she'll be 2 in February. I have that child through my present marriage.
And does Elizabeth, your wife, act as your first, this daughter's mother at this point?
Yes.
Have they bonded as mother and daughter?
Yes.
Are you working now, Mr. Keithley?
I work at Lowe's Home Improvement in Bloomington.
What do you do there?
I'm a customer service associate, and I also stock merchandise.
And can you tell me about when and how you met your wife, Elizabeth?
I was introduced through her sister, who's a resident of the United States and married a U.S. citizen. I had a failed marriage, and I found out that Filipinos had good integrity and good family values operating within the culture. And through the explanation of her sister and her husband, I thought, well, I'd just check it out. So I called her on the phone. I contacted her in the fall of 2001. We talked for several months. I went over in March of 2002 to visit for about 3 or 4 weeks.
You're saying the Philippines?
The Philippines. I traveled over there. I got my passport. We continued to correspond by computer and by telephone. And then in 2003, in July, we were married.
And you had gone back there again to marry her?
I did.
And did you ultimately filed papers to bring her to this country?
I did.
And had she ever been to the United States prior to this time, before you filed papers for her?
No.
And what kind of visa did she return on?
She entered on a K3 visa.
And what part of the Philippines is Elizabeth from?
She's from the VUR in the south, Mindanao.
And is that a small town that she was from, or?
A small village, no hotels, no 7-Elevens, just a gas station, and that's about it.
Had you ever been to a place like that before?
No, it was very interesting, though.
And when Elizabeth came to this country, did she come and move in right with you and your family?
She did.
And did you continue to reside together since her entry and up until this point?
Yeah.
What's your impression of her morals and her ability to be truthful?
Well, my pursuit of a person of integrity and character turned out to be very much what I got in my wife. She attains those capabilities in everyday life and marriage. She was very liked in her job.
What kind of work does she do?
She was the #1 person in her department for a local hospital, a Catholic hospital in our community. She received high honors. We received perks like we went to the Coliseum.
Let's move to the point that we're all here for today. Tell the court what happened that day, as far as what you saw and heard and remembered.
Well, actually, I didn't see or hear anything because I was sitting in the back and let her go up there by herself. I figured that, there wasn't going to be any problem. It's a government official, and she's going to do this, and this. I didn't really find out about the registering to vote until later on when she had gotten things in the mail, but we didn't think too much about it.
And did she ever talk about, or did you ever talk about voting in the United States prior to that day?
No.
Was that ever part of why she was going to visit the Department of Motor Vehicles?
No, sir. No, it was not.
And were you aware that following her visit to the Department of Motor Vehicles, she received a voter registration card?
I think she showed me eventually, yes. There was an election coming up that was in '06, November. Yes, she showed it to me then.
Did you have any reason to think that she wasn't eligible to vote?
No, I did not.
Has Beth ever lied to you?
Lied to me? No.
And how come you didn't tell her she shouldn't vote when she got her voter registration card? Or if you knew she was going to vote, did she know that there was anything wrong with that?
I didn't think it was a problem, no.
And why is that?
Well, I thought because she was processed down there that they had evaluated her ability and just processed her through.
Did you have any reason to believe that the circumstances surrounding her obtaining a voter registration card were fraudulent or untruthful?
None in the least.
And when did you come to know that her voting was not something that was legal?
When we went for her green card interview in the first week of December, which was actually that next month, we were stunned to find out that in her answering questions with the interviewer that she had done that wrongfully, and we had a problem then.
What did Beth tell the officer when she was asked about the voting?
The officer got a statement out and informed her that she was under oath of perjury or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yes. And what measures did you take immediately after this interview took place, when you were told and Beth was told that it was wrong to go and be voting?
Well, when we were told that she was permanently banned from citizenship, we knew we had a problem because her intent of coming here was to be my wife and mother of the children, and there would be a problem.
And did Beth eventually go and withdraw her name from the voter registration rolls?
Yes.
Did you know Beth to always be a law-abiding person, to ever break the law or intend to break the law?
Not to my knowledge.
Has she ever told anybody she is a U.S. citizen?
No.
Have you or her ever lied during this process to get her into the country?
No, sir.
Was it a pretty difficult process of getting her here?
Very difficult.
Did you handle it on your own for the most part?
I did.
As far as you know, would Beth, knowing what you've both been through, do anything to sacrifice having followed the laws and the exact diligence that you did?
I don't think that we would have intentionally jeopardized anything because it means too much for us, for all of us, to have our lives be falling down the road of life. For us to lie or do anything fraudulently would jeopardize that. The answer would be no.
And did you or Beth have any reason to question that the Secretary of State's office would do anything to jeopardize her or her status in this country?
I had no idea.
I have no further questions.
Yes, Mr. Guckenberger.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Guckenberger is the attorney, just in case you may not understand. He's the attorney for the Department of Homeland Security.
I just have a few questions for you, Mr. Keithley. Number one, I believe you said that you and Beth voted in the 2006 election.
That's correct.
Did Beth vote in that election?
She did.
Okay, and sir, what is your degree of education?
I've got 2 years of college, and I've got 1 year of vocational training.
Okay, do you know if your wife ever held herself out to be a citizen of the United States?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Do you know if your wife ever held herself out to other people to be a citizen of the United States?
Never.
Do you know that one has to be a citizen to vote in a federal election?
I wasn't really clear on that, no.
You're not clear on that, or you are now, though?
I am now, right. I wasn't then.
Yes, okay. All right, Your Honor, I have no further questions for the witness, Mr. Keithley. Thank you.
Mr. Hannes.
No questions, Judge.
Okay, sir, you can step down, have a seat in the back or outside, whichever you'd like. Okay, so if either side has a brief closing statement on either of the charges or on the application for adjustment of status, I'll listen to you say approximately 5 minutes for each.
Yes.
Keep it within that. It's not an iron rule, but just give me a minute before. I'll listen to Mr. Guckenberger first, simply because you have the charge, and Mr. Hannes, you have the lead. All right, Mr. Guckenberger, and I think you have your closing statements to make. You're making two charges. The first is the respondent voted in violation of state, federal, or local constitutional provisions or statute. And the second is that she's falsely represented herself to be a citizen of the United States for the purpose of obtaining a benefit under the Act. At this point, are you still pursuing both charges of removability?
Yes, Your Honor, although I think we should stress the first charge.
Okay, you are required to show by clear and convincing evidence that the charge is established.
You know, Your Honor, this was a federal election, House of Representatives, but counsel is claiming that there is no violation here because it was unintentional. But we have a federal statute, 18 U.S.C. 611, voting by aliens, and it reads, "It shall be unlawful for any alien to vote in any election." Now, there are exceptions. If your parents were citizens, if you were legal permanent residents since the age of 16, and you reasonably believe that you were a citizen of the United States, well, we don't have the exceptions here, Judge, and clearly there is a violation of 18 U.S.C. 611. She did vote in a congressional election, and she's not a citizen of the United States. So that charge should be sustained, Your Honor.
All right. Then we turn to Mr. Hannes. One moment before you start.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Hannes.
I'm going to address what counsel honed in on at the end and work backwards. Did we violate the law that he just referred to, 611? It says it shall be unlawful to do X, Y, and Z. It talks about exceptions, that she doesn't fit under these exceptions. However, there's an additional issue to be taken into account. If she were going to be charged at violating federal law, she would have an opportunity to assert a defense called entrapment by estoppel. And what it essentially does is recognize that there are circumstances under which people act apparently unlawfully, because that's what it looks like on the surface. But beneath the surface, the law allows for the fact that maybe by virtue of a government instruction or guidance or reasonable reliance, that this person shouldn't be deemed to have violated that law because of the guidance that the alleged transgressor relied on. And I think that is the perfect case that completely captures the essence of what this is all about. I think we all could agree that there wasn't any intent on Mrs. Keithley's part. This is a law-abiding person who went through way too much trouble to come to this country to ever intentionally or with a forethought endanger her status here just to get a chance to vote. She really wanted to get her driver's license. I think it's pretty clear here. When it comes down to somebody who goes to the trouble of coming into this country to go through all the steps, honest as they come, and go to get a driver's license, showing documents, honestly shown from the Philippines, and the government official says, "Do you want to vote?" Why would they offer her an option that she wouldn't be eligible for? Driver's license, you check. I'm here for that. Or organ donor, check. Voting, okay, sure. Her testimony was that she merely signed where she was told. She would not intentionally say she was a U.S. citizen. What kind of fool does she think the government official would be? She showed herself to be a citizen of the Philippines. She's new to this country. She's going to do something like this to endanger herself? Forget it. You heard the testimony of John Keithley, a man who was looking for love with a woman of integrity, hardworking and honest, and in his wife he found one, a woman who bonded with his daughter. He's going to sit there and screw things up and encourage his wife to do something that she's not allowed to do? Forget it. We have here the picture-perfect instance of an individual innocently being guided along by a government official. And frankly, is it that government official's fault? Probably not. Whose fault is it? Is it Beth's fault to put her trust in this official? I'm in the United States, the greatest country in the world, and somebody is going to do something against my interest? No. What this country stands for is fairness, and especially in light of our statutes that are set forth when it comes to immigration proceedings and individuals in removal, that the laws be construed in favor of the alien. And Judge, I beg you today, and I believe and I appeal to your sense of fairness, and I know that counsel is doing his best representing the government, but I think that what is in our laws isn't about just frivolously applying it and letting her go back to the Philippines to ruin a family here because of something that was not her fault. She is going to read everything she signs in the future. So Judge, thank you for your patience. I'm sorry I got emotional. I guess I've just seen a very, very difficult set of facts here, and I believe that we're not just left to throwing up our arms and saying that there's nothing we can do. The law allows us to do something, and that concept is there for a reason, because when innocent people are being guided down the path by a government official, we absolve that person because we entrust the government to do the right thing. Thank you, Your Honor.
I just have one or two more questions to ask you. And the purpose to ask the question is to give you an opportunity to state your best opinion of it. Okay, let me put all three questions on the table, and then you can make notes and answer them in turn. First, as far as this provision says, any alien who has voted in violation of any federal statute or regulation is inadmissible. Now, if that statute says that you can't vote if you're not a citizen, isn't that as far as I can go? In other words, I can go first to establish, is this person an alien, not a citizen? Then the next step is, did they vote? Then the next step is this, was the voting within violation of any state, federal, or local law, ordinance, or regulation? It seems to me the provision limits me to those three elements. How does that support your defense then?
Entrapment. Sorry, Judge.
Hold on. That's the first question. The second question, you're saying that the respondent has a defense of entrapment by estoppel. Now, there are defenses in criminal proceedings, and entrapment is one of them, certainly. But this is not a criminal proceeding. As you well know, this is a civil proceeding, and so criminal provisions do not apply. If this is a defense in a criminal proceeding, how does it relate to this proceeding, which is a civil proceeding? Thirdly, even though this is a civil proceeding, where's the authority? By authority, where's the case in which a judge? What definition of entrapment are you using here to show that? And how does that definition fit these facts? Okay, these are my three questions.
I believe the answer to your first question, how far can you go? Well, I don't think the question stops at, did you vote? We have the voting law, which is a criminal law, 611. It's punishable by prison. And how do we determine if it's been violated? Well, if she was being charged, okay, because that would be in the context in which the violation would be administered. We don't just operate in a vacuum. The affirmative defense, the absolute defense in this case, is entrapment by estoppel. It's in a couple of criminal cases, and it's a well-recognized federal defense. I believe that is what allows us to go from her voting unlawfully and it not being a violation of the law. It's that she could not be convicted of that law. Because we have to connect the two, we can't just say, okay, she voted and it's a bad thing for immigration. We have to go to the underlying law. And if you go to 611, and even though the language doesn't have anything in there about entrapment by estoppel, I believe that we have room in this court to apply it. And I know we're just amateur criminal lawyers here, Judge, at best, but if you take...
I want you to tell me what definition of entrapment you were using. Where are you getting it from, and how do the facts fit that definition?
Entrapment by estoppel is set forth in U.S. v. Howell and in Raleigh v. Ohio. It's on page 15 of my brief. Entrapment by estoppel is a defense, quote, where the government official has actively misled the defendant in the reasonable belief that his or her charged conduct is legal, end quote. That's the concept. It's set forth in the case law. And if Ms. Keithley were being charged with violating the law, she has that defense. That's how we're getting from the criminal to the civil. That is the underlying issue, the 611. And reading this civil proceeding to that defense is very easy because the underlying 611 involves a law that has criminal penalties, and so she'd have a chance. Let's see if that violation took place. Let's really see, Judge. I believe this gives us an opportunity to show that she is not inadmissible or removable based on the alleged violation of the law.
All right. Then at this point, I'm going to recess now to prepare a decision. I'd like to know if I were to deny the respondent's request and find her removable, would she be seeking voluntary departure?
I'd have to think about that.
All right. Think about it and then let me know after we resume. And this is not an indication one way or the other of the resolution of the case. I just want it to be addressed when we resume.
Okay.
So at this point, I'll recess. We are going back on the record. The voter form clearly states that it is the voter form for voting in the United States. It is stated on that. I have concluded that the Department of Homeland Security has not shown by clear and convincing evidence that the respondent knowingly and willfully misrepresented a material fact. I find, therefore, the second charge of falsely representing herself to be a citizen of the United States for the purpose of obtaining a benefit under the Act is not sustained. However, I do find the first charge of voted in violation of state, federal, or local constitutional provision or statute is sustained. The respondent's defense is that she was entrapped by estoppel and contends that she was entrapped because a government official led her believe that an action that she took, namely signing the voter registration, was legal and that excuses her action. I do not agree that this is a defense that she can interpose to this charge. The statute in question, Section 212A-10D of the Act, states as follows. Any alien who has voted in violation of any federal, state, or local constitutional provision, statute, ordinance, or regulation is inadmissible. First, the respondent does not dispute that she is an alien, that is, someone who is not a United States citizen. Secondly, she does not dispute that she voted in November of 2006. In fact, there is a form that she signed immediately prior to voting. Thirdly, she does not dispute that she voted in a federal election. I have also concluded that the respondent is inadmissible under this Section 212 for the same reasons that I have described in my discussion of the charge. The respondent voted in a federal election for a congressman. The provision does not allow for any exception except for Section 2, for which she does not qualify. Therefore, she is inadmissible. It is ordered that the respondent's application for adjustment of status under Section 245A be denied. It is further ordered that the respondent be granted voluntary departure without any expense to the government, provided she departs on or before January 16, 2009. It is further ordered that the respondent post a $500 bond within 5 business days of this decision and present a valid Philippine passport within 60 days of this order. If she does not comply with these terms, the following order shall take effect. It shall be ordered that she be removed from the United States to the Philippines.
All rise. Honorable judges of the United States Courts of Appeal in and for the 7th Judicial District. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All persons before this honorable court are admonished to draw near and give their attention as this court is now sitting. God save the United States and this honorable court.
You may be seated. This is a hearing taking place on October 18th, 2011. Federal Judge Easterbrook, Judge Ripple, and Judge Kane presiding.
Mr. Hannes, I will restore all your time and you can start from the top.
This matter comes before this court after the Board of Immigration Appeals upheld an immigration judge's decision 3 years ago to deny a green card application and to essentially order the permanent removal of Elizabeth Keithley from this country. The reason Beth Keithley doesn't have a green card today is not because she didn't follow the laws and procedures, and her husband didn't follow the laws or procedures or committed any crimes. It is because she visited the Bloomington, Illinois Secretary of State's office solely to obtain a state ID shortly after arriving, presenting her Philippine passport and non-immigrant visa as identification, and thereafter was misled into registering to vote and ultimately voting. But for voting, Mrs. Keithley was deemed otherwise eligible for a green card.
What are the misrepresentations? You say misled into voting. And of course, one of the responses that I understand in the Attorney General's brief that you've never identified any false statements made to your client. In fact, your client apparently said that she can't remember when she checked the box saying that she was a citizen and wanted to register to vote, and then can't remember why she subsequently voted.
I believe she didn't check a box. She didn't recall there being a box checked. And the misstatement or the misleading behavior was...
Well, there was a box. She signed on a line saying, I'm a citizen of the United States. And then she voted in an election.
Respectfully, it wasn't clear that when she signed it, it was checked. And in fact, the conclusion was verified by the judge in dismissing a false claim to citizenship charge. It was that part of the notice to appear in these proceedings. Mrs. Keithley credibly asserted that her registering to vote came only as a result of being guided down that path by a government official after presenting her Philippine passport and her U.S. non-immigrant visa. Voting or donating an organ were the last thing on Beth Keithley's mind when she visited the Secretary of State's office shortly after arriving.
Or maybe I sent you down the wrong path. The reason why your client was deemed inadmissible was not the registration vote, it was voting. Your client didn't simply register, your client voted, right? That's what violates 611. Now, is there any argument? Did your client ever argue that she did not know that she was voting, that she thought she was doing something other than voting?
Of course not. She knew she was voting.
Well, 611 appears to be a general intent statute. There is no requirement that your client, that anybody know the voting as an alien is unlawful. All right, so just forget about the registration. Your client can see she's an alien, concede she's voting, and concede she knew she was voting. Is there any other element of 611 that hasn't been established?
Well, let's suppose that she was charged criminally, and that there is a defense that is available to her because it is not an indefensible charge. And Mrs. Keithley has the defense of entrapment by estoppel because she ultimately was issued a voter registration card as a result of a faulty process.
She is not saying that anybody told her to vote. Your whole argument has to do with voter registration. She's not saying anybody told her to vote, and she's not saying anybody assured her that if she voted, it would be lawful. Are you saying either thing?
No, I'm saying that she voted after what she thought was a right and proper procedure by getting the voter registration card. And that card was a result of a transaction conducted and steered by a Secretary of State official. The lower court, the immigration court...
And that is still another problem as I understand it. The Attorney General says, without any contradiction from you as far as I can see, that whenever the scope of the doctrine, it does not permit state officials to allow people to violate federal statutes.
I believe that the Secretary of State official did have authority to register or not register this individual, and the voting came from the transaction that was misleading. Immigrants...
There is no actual authority to register aliens to vote.
Of course not. That actually starts as the foundation of our defense, because there's the misleading and a mistaken statement or action by the government official. We have the immigration court specifically saying she was doing what she was told to do after she presented her Philippine passport. The Board of Immigration Appeals used the word misleading when it was reviewing the record and was looking at whether or not the entrapment by estoppel defense should apply. Let's go back to the immigration court and let them decide. Because the judge reading his decision stopped at the very moment where he could have applied the entrapment by estoppel defense.
I'm not sure I understand your argument. You are not arguing that anyone affirmatively told your client to vote. Is that true?
Actually, I'm arguing that the issuance of the voter registration card was an affirmative
Okay, then you're not arguing that anybody told your client to vote. And therefore, necessarily, you're not saying that anybody assured your client that voting on the circumstances was lawful.
Anybody couldn't, if anybody's to mean the system, a Secretary of State official, culminating with the system being the Board of Education, by issuing the voter registration card? Yes. I'm saying somebody told her to vote. Somebody told her it was okay to vote, I should say.
Illinois law does require proof of citizenship in order to register, does it not?
Well, that's an interesting question, because in researching this, I was thinking, how in the world did this happen? I contacted the governor's office, the Secretary of State's office, the Attorney General, and everybody's saying, they're pointing their finger at somebody else and saying, we're just not doing what we're told. So when you have a foreign-born applicant fresh from the Philippines whose family has done everything they were supposed to, followed every minutia in the labyrinth of U.S. immigration law, and she's being slapped with deportation? I mean, we have in deportation proceedings that the laws should be construed in favor of the applicant. If any lingering ambiguity exists, then this is that case. Beth Keithley is no more in violation of voting laws than a motorist who is waved through a stop sign by a police officer. Just as we wouldn't give him a ticket, we shouldn't give Beth Keithley a deportation order. She was relying on the guidance of a government official. If there's no further questions, I will reserve my remaining time for rebuttal. Thank you.
Counsel? Ms. O'Donnell?
Ms. O'Donnell?
Afternoon, Your Honors.
I noticed that your brief doesn't discuss the other case that I have in mind, which is Kamani against Holder, argued in this court on October 5th.
That's correct, Your Honor. I did not.
How many others are pending in this circuit?
I don't know, but I'd be happy to do a search in the office and...
I would like to know how many others there are like that.
I'll be happy to do a search. I probably should have done that before I came and asked how many outstanding voter cases, because if, as counsel said, it's happening in Illinois, then it should also be in other circuits. But this is the first one in 6 or 7 years that I've encountered.
What kind of discretion does your office exercise in determining whether or not to pursue these?
The discretion really lies with the Department of Homeland Security, and that would be dictated by their most recent...
How much scrutiny did this case get with Homeland Security?
I'm uncertain. I can't speak for them because I wasn't part of that, but I can tell you it went through several levels in our office.
The finding of the immigration judge was in every respect that this woman was a model citizen, or I should say model person in this country.
Except for this.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. And the problem we have is that this is a general intent crime. It doesn't matter what she intended. There are other issues with counsel's argument here. One is his assumption that the estoppel by entrapment applies in this case. He has not identified, nor could I discover, any cases where such a defense is valid in a civil proceeding. The entrapment by estoppel arises out of criminal law.
But if the defense is accepted, it means that no crime has been committed.
That's correct. But the purpose of the defense...
And the immigration statute says that it applies to people who have violated this law, 611.
That's right.
So one would think that if you have a defense, which means you haven't violated 611, then the immigration case can't be predicated on a violation of 611. Isn't that perfectly straightforward?
It is perfectly straightforward, except that the reason entrapment by estoppel arises out of a due process.
If an agent of the Secret Service comes to somebody and says, we're investigating the sale of counterfeit currency, I want you to go to Mr. Smith and offer him $10,000 of these counterfeit $100 bills and see if he buys your bills. And you go to Smith and you offer him $10,000 of counterfeit currency, knowing it would be counterfeit. You can't be criminally prosecuted for distributing counterfeit currency because somebody with actual authority to conduct an investigation has said, you're acting as my agent. Go do this. I mean, we call that entrapment by estoppel if some silly prosecutor prosecutes. But it means there has been no violation of the counterfeiting law.
That's correct.
It sounds like what you're saying is, oh yeah, we'd throw that alien out even though he was just following the Secret Service directions.
It's very different. What I'm saying is, there is no case law that shows if entrapment by estoppel is available in civil proceedings. Mrs. Keithley presents a question of statutory interpretation as to whether or not these sorts of defenses should be available in these civil proceedings. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. Anything else, Your Honors?
Thank you very much, counsel.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hannes, you have maybe 30 seconds.
Very briefly, we're not seeking criminal defenses to be applied in civil proceedings. We're trying to have criminal defenses be taken into account where there's an equation involving a violation of a criminal statute. Whether or not Beth Keithley voted in violation shouldn't depend on the forum in which the case is being heard. It either was violated or it wasn't. And in this situation, we have Beth Keithley with a valid defense. And if there's any question, the immigration court is the best forum for that decision to be made. The judge heard witnesses, the judge listened to the arguments, and he deliberately stopped short, perhaps waiting for guidance from this court, and it is a case of first impression. Thank you, Your Honors.
Let's recess.
In the United States Court of Appeals for the 7th District Circuit, Number 11, 1594, Attorney General of the United States Respondent, petition for review of orders of the Board of Immigration Appeals, argued October 18th, 2011, decided August 22nd, 2012, before Easterbrook Chief Judge and Ripple and Kane Circuit Judges. Voting has come back to haunt Beth Keithley. She contends that because the state official knew that she is an alien, the question about voting and the state's decision to send her a voter registration card led her to believe that voting would be lawful. It's true enough that entrapment by estoppel is the name of a defense to criminal prosecution. But it does not follow that the defense is irrelevant in civil proceedings. The section of the law declares that an alien who has voted in violation of state or federal law is inadmissible. The only way to determine whether a person has violated a criminal statute is to examine both the elements of the law and all defenses properly raised. Suppose the statute declares that murder is a crime and defines murder as the intentional killing of a human being. A person who kills in self-defense, however, is not guilty of murder. A provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act withholding benefits from an alien who has committed murder requires the agency to decide not only whether the alien killed someone, but also whether the killing was justified and thus not murder. If Keithley has a good defense, she has not violated 611 and remains eligible for adjustment of status. We must assume that Elizabeth Keithley represented herself to be an alien. That's why she says she thought the official's conduct implied, though wrongly, that aliens could vote. If the immigration judge does credit Keithley's statements about what occurred, the Department of Homeland Security should give serious consideration to withdrawing its proposal that she be declared inadmissible and removed from the United States. A person who behaves with scrupulous honesty only to be misled by a state official should be as welcome in this country today as she was when she first entered this country. The petition for review is granted, and the matter is remanded for proceedings consistent with the opinion of this court.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. This group of people that are gathered here in this room right now, and all of you, are about to take the final step to become U.S. citizens. You have come to this decision for many different reasons. You've come to this room for many different places around the world, and will now go through this monumental step together. It's my honor to conduct this ceremony with all of you here today. I will start with the naturalization oath, and then I shall make some remarks. Please stand if you can. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I hereby declare an oath.
I hereby declare an oath
that I absolutely and entirely renounce.
that I absolutely and entirely renounce
All allegiance and fidelity.
all allegiance and fidelity
To any foreign prince.
to any foreign prince,
Potentate.
potentate,
State or sovereignty.
state or sovereignty,
Of whom and of which I have been.
of whom or which I have been
A subject or citizen.
a subject or citizen,
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
To which I will bear true faith and allegiance.
to which I will bear true faith and allegiance,
And that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law.
and that I will bear arms in defense of the United States when required by law,
And that I will perform non-combatant service
and that I will perform non-combatant service
in the armed forces of the United States when required by law.
in the armed service of the United States when required by law,
and that I will perform work of national importance
and that I will perform work of national importance
under civilian direction when required by law,
under civilian direction when required by law,
and that I take this obligation freely
and that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You may be seated. It is my honor to welcome you to the ranks of citizens of the United States of America. While I know that this is a special day for all of you, it's a special day for me as well. Both my grandparents on my maternal side, the Noguchis and the Ogawas, came from a long line of samurai clans. My great-great-grandfather suffered from 27 sword cuts, and after a fierce battle, he asked permission from the shogun to commit harakiri rather than slowly die from his wounds. His great-grandson, Minasoke Noguchi, emigrated to the United States in 1898. He eventually purchased a farm in eastern Colorado and raised sugar beets. He and my grandmother raised 5 daughters, whom they encouraged to embrace the American culture. As a struggling farmer during the Great Depression, he was able to see all of them receive a university education. Even though my 4 aunts and my mother had birthright citizenship, my grandparents were barred from becoming U.S. citizens until the Immigration and Nationality Act was passed in 1952, 54 years after legally arriving in the U.S. During World War II, even though a U.S. citizen, my uncle Hideo Sasaki and his family were sent to a concentration camp in Poston, Arizona, due to their Japanese ancestry. On my paternal side, the Campbells and the Swains came from Scots-Irish stock. They too were farmers from rural stock. The Scots-Irish were hated by the English, the Highland Scots, and later the Ulster Irish in the north. Upon arriving in America, the Irish again faced discrimination. Nevertheless, the Japanese, the Irish, the myriad of other immigrant classes persevered and all became upstanding citizens. It is important for each of you to explore your unique heritage and to celebrate your decision and your ancestors' decision to arrive on these shores. Just as democracy is fragile, so is citizenship. Cherish your citizenship and our democratic system. Like my grandparents, you've come to the United States looking for a better life for yourselves and your children. Becoming an American citizen is an important step in that process. And you now have a great opportunity before you. You now have certain rights and privileges that you did not have before. With these rights and privileges, however, come certain responsibilities, and it is important to take a moment to remind you of those obligations. You now have the responsibility to help make this country a better place than it already is, not just for yourselves and your families, but for everyone. You have the responsibility to obey our laws and to pay taxes, and it is important that you do so. You have the responsibility to vote in our elections, and you must do so. We've seen in recent years that every vote counts, and it is extremely important that you speak up by exercising this important privilege. You also have the responsibility to serve as jurors, to participate in the administration of justice, to help fellow citizens resolve their disputes, and to decide whether individuals charged with a crime are guilty or not. We need your help to make sure that justice is served. One of the most important things that you can do as a citizen is to respect the rights of all your fellow citizens. All of us take pride in our ethnic heritage. Americans come in all shapes and sizes and colors. And one of the greatest strengths of our country is that we have such diversity. I heard another federal judge once describe our society as a symphony, and that is as good a description to describe the vision of our society. Ours should be a society where we celebrate differences, where we bring together our respective heritages, like the different musical instruments in an orchestra, to produce one beautiful American symphony. Instead of letting our differences conflict to create discord and disharmony, we must learn to appreciate and respect our differences so that we will come together for the good of all. This is a great day for all of you, and it's a great day for the United States. Congratulations.